Have you ever felt like the small things you do every day don't really matter? Like the little choices, reading a few verses, going for a walk, tidying up one space, saying a quick prayer? They seem so small they couldn't possibly be shaping anything significant. But what if those small, consistent choices are actually the very place where your life is being formed? Today, we're talking about the power of consistency, not as pressure to do more, but as an invitation to be faithful in the small things God places in front of us. Because over time, small habits don't stay small. They shape a life. You're listening to the Habits of Hope podcast, where we believe a life rooted in hope is formed through daily rhythms that help us trust God's faithfulness even in life's hard seasons. Each episode is an invitation to practice small, intentional habits that shape a deeper spiritual life. Together, we have meaningful conversations, share honest stories, and explore biblical truth in ways that help you live with steady faith, resilient hope, and clear purpose. Because the more we practice choosing hope, the more we begin to recognize God's faithfulness at work in our own stories. If you're ready to deepen your connection with God and navigate life with a hopeful heart, you're in the right place. Let's get started, because a deeper life begins now. I'm Larissa, your co-host for today. I'm known as Grateful Chick on social media, founder of the Cultivate community, and Chief Inspirational Officer of the Grateful Tribe. I can't wait to hear the nuggets y'all get from today's discussion. This was such a fun episode to create together, and we hope you think so too. Let me welcome Ginger Harrington.
Hey, friend.
So good to see you today, sis.
Oh, it's always fun to get started with a new episode. I'm Ginger Harrington, author, blogger, and speaker. You can find me at gingerharrington.com, as well as all of the full article versions of each podcast episode. Let's jump into today's scripture. Today we're talking about Luke 16:10. Jesus says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Sometimes we hear this and think about big responsibilities, big sums of investments or future opportunities. But this is really about something that starts in the everyday and grows from there. It's about faithfulness in small things. I love this because when it comes to the big stuff, I could get so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And, you feel like you're scrambling, trying to keep all the balls in the air. But when I come back to being faithful in the little things today, I can get my brain around that. And it just, it's kind of that, what's your next right step here? And it just brings this down to a doable level for me.
Yeah.
God cares about how we handle what feels small. Faithfulness is about more than visibility. It's about trust and being trustworthy. It's important that we grow in feeling that, yeah, I am a trustworthy person. I am faithful. And I think sometimes we really struggle with that. I know I have. Faithfulness begins with being trustworthy, and we can trust God to help us grow in faithfulness. Oftentimes we want more, we want the big stuff, and God forms us in the little, the everyday things, the next steps versus the things that are 5 miles down the road. Faithfulness in the small things is where transformation begins.
I love this, Ginger. And we're going to talk a little bit about science and habit formation. And just for those of you who maybe don't nerd out on this stuff, that's okay, because that is not me either. However, it's really fascinating. And I think it has really been one of the things that has helped me in this area. So there's something really fascinating about how God designed our brains that actually support this idea. Neuroscience uses the word neuroplasticity, which simply means that your brain is constantly being shaped and rewired by what you repeatedly do. Every time you repeat an action, whether it's a thought, a behavior, or a response, you're strengthening a neural pathway in your brain. Over time, those pathways become the default. What was once hard becomes natural. What was once intentional becomes automatic. That's why this matters so much. The small things we repeat don't just fill our days, they actually shape who we are becoming. Habits are simply the way we practice faithfulness in the everyday. As John Ortberg writes, we're not shaped by what we intend to do, but by what we actually do. And that's a good word. It's a good word to remember. So it's not our intentions that shape our lives. It's our consistent actions. Habits are formational, not just functional. Repetition builds growth over time. This aligns with spiritual formation, not just behavior change. And I just love knowing those little tidbits to help me stay motivated in allowing the Lord to make changes in and through me that are actually to my advantage.
Me too. And I love that quote by John Ortberg. I jokingly referred to myself in years past as the queen of good intentions. And it hit this very dilemma of being faithful in the small things and actually getting things done and growing the growth and changing the habit pattern and just keeping up with all the daily things, life, family, health, ministry, and work, just all the things. Being able to move from good intentions to rhythms of life that actually help us take those small, faithful daily steps is so practical.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to think about how real change happens because the point isn't to do small things and the point isn't to build a bunch of habits in our life, but it's to live with faithfulness so that we're accomplishing the things that need to be done and that the Lord is able to really change and transform us as we continue in our life with Christ. I've been reading Dallas Willard a lot lately, and he talks a lot about this. So I want to bring some of this into our conversation because this is where we can go a little deeper here. Because one of the reasons that we struggle with consistency isn't just about being self-disciplined enough. It's about how change actually happens in us. And the whole person matters. I think it's very easy to be working on a habit in your life that has to do with your health or how you keep your home or how you use your time. And we tend to kind of divide them up as the different pieces of the pie versus looking at the whole person, that we're integrated. One of the things that often defeats growth is when we don't pay attention to the different parts of who we are and how they relate. For instance, how many times have we tried to change our behavior without addressing our thoughts, what we're thinking, our mind, our will, our emotions, or even our body? All of these parts are connected. Think of the scripture that talks about where Jesus tells us to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's not just poetic language. This is showing us that real transformation and loving God, our relationship with God, involves all of us, the whole person. Think about the mind and will connection. What we think about actually sets direction for what we choose. So our will, our ability to follow through with developing a good habit and being faithful in the everyday things is deeply connected to what's going on in our head. So if we try to build consistent habits, but our thoughts are working against us, we get stuck. And
Yeah.
boy, I have been in that place more often than I'd like to
Right?
admit.
Me too, sis. Me too.
Any thoughts here?
Well, I like that you brought up that statement about self-discipline, that this is not about self-discipline, because I don't know about anybody else, but I struggle with that. I just assumed it was me. When I was younger, I wasn't experienced enough. And then being a full-time caregiver and menopause and all these different things. And it is some of that, of course, but it's not that I'm lazy and not that I'm not self-disciplined, because I am in some areas. And this is what I love about going deeper and the science part, because we can realize this is how our brain works and the connections that our brain and our body and our thoughts all have together. This can get us to the solution side of things, I think is my point. We're going to get there.
So true. Frequently, we do not stop to think about what we're thinking about.
No. And I love that you say that because you've said that several times over the years in my life and in reference to Holy in the Moment, the book that you wrote. And it's so good to stop and think about what we're thinking about.
And when we think about this mind and will connection, when we want to do something, when we truly do want to do something, it's so much easier. Our wanter, our will, and our decider, when the brain is on board and the emotions are on board, it doesn't feel as much of an uphill climb.
Yeah.
If your thoughts say, this doesn't matter, that consistency piece breaks down. If your mind is renewed, your habits begin to follow. That also begs the question of what kind of habits are we wanting to form? Because I think we can get into some real self-improvement plans. I'm going to make my life all over, particularly at the beginning of the year. This can be a thing. But these are the everyday things. Let's take it into the next point, Larissa.
Okay, so here we're going to start talking about the role of the body and habits. We're going to continue with Dallas Willard, who describes habit as what you do without thinking. To be honest with you, I didn't think of it that way, so I love this. This is so good. And that's actually a gift because it means the things we practice consistently can become a part of us. Our bodies learn through repetition. So what we practice over time moves from effort to something that becomes natural. And as you said, I've noticed this in my life, and it feels different and it feels better.
Dallas Willard gives an illustration of this that just makes so much sense. He's talking about learning to drive a car.
Ooh, okay.
And do we want to be in the car with someone who has to think about every decision that they make when they're driving?
No.
You practice all of those things when you're learning, and then with time and experience, it becomes natural. You drive the car without thinking about every small action and decision that is made. So I thought that was a really helpful illustration of this concept.
Yeah, that's so good. The car analogies are really good. So here's the connection piece. This is why small habits matter so much. They move faithfulness from being something we try to do to something we begin to actually live. And I think that is going to make such a difference for us moving forward. And this is where we hold on to grace in the middle of all of this. And I'm definitely in that season where I'm having to show myself much grace, and having some of these thoughts and ideas and tips have really made an impact in that area. Dallas Willard defines grace as God acting in our lives to accomplish what we cannot accomplish on our own. When we practice small habits of faithfulness, we're not doing this alone. We're participating in what God is already doing in us.
The episode that we did on the Holy Spirit as our helper, episode 72, we are not alone, even
Amen.
in the small daily habits of life where we are building consistency. And again, we are also building that trustworthiness. And it's important. It isn't so that we have this life filled with all these beautiful habits. The habits, they're part of the process that God uses to shape us. And that's the most important part, is that God is working through the effort that we are making. They're not simply something that we achieve to be a better person. We've talked about the connection of the mind and the will and the body. And let's get to the heart of it, the soul. That's also a piece in play here. The soul is the deepest part of who we are. And when life feels scattered and inconsistent, it's often because our parts are out of alignment. Restoration happens when those parts begin to come in harmony with what God is doing. When our thoughts and our will and our actions begin to move in the same direction and we're staying in step with the Holy Spirit, this is where small and consistent habits can become very powerful, because they're one of the ways that we begin to bring our lives into alignment, not all at once, but over time. Any thoughts here, sis?
there's so much clarity in knowing this. And I think it's going to help us show ourselves grace and help us to identify areas where we need to improve with the goal in mind of realizing it's to our benefit and we get to partnership with the Lord. That part is just beautiful because he is considering all the parts of us where we may not consider all the parts of us. God absolutely is. So I love that this is a whole person kind of thing.
Right. And I'm going to connect it right back to the scripture about loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. You know what? I think our most profitable things happen when we ask the Lord, Lord, where do you see in my life I need to work on a small, consistent habit? Where am I struggling with this? And what's that struggle about? So bringing your relationship with God fully into this process. It's not separate. It's not like, oh, I have my relationship with God and then I'm working on my habits. No, it's all part of our life with God. And that's a beautiful thing. The truth is, we are always forming habits, whether we think about it or not. We don't drift into growth. Positive growth and faithfulness in our life does not happen by accident. We drift into patterns, and those patterns over time shape the direction of our lives. Both positive and negative habits compound. For example, our thought life. We can build the habits of gratitude, or we can default to patterns of negativity. When it comes to reactions, we can develop a pattern or a habit of pausing and praying, or we can keep defaulting to the reactions that sometimes trigger our flesh. When it comes to attention, we can practice presence, or we can default to distraction. Thoughts here, my friend?
Doesn't mean it's easy, especially for many of us who default like to negativity. And we tend to just have a negativity bias anyways, as people in general. When I feel out of control or feel like I have no choice or any control, I can get very frustrated. So I love that we have choices and that those small choices, and I love that word because I think we always want everything to be so grand. Those small choices really matter and they shape us and the direction that we're going. So good. So let's talk about why habits are worth building, right? So we've talked all about this piece, but let's talk about the why, because why really matters as well. So habits matter because they help us live out what we value consistently. And here's some key benefits. They help us show up when motivation fades. And I don't know about y'all, but motivation fades almost on the daily. Another key benefit is they reduce decision fatigue, which is very real. They align our daily life with our deeper values. And another key benefit is they make faithfulness sustainable, because I think that's really our heart. A lot of us want to be faithful, especially to the Lord. So over time, those small practices become the way faithfulness takes root in our everyday lives. And one of the things that Ginger and I want to do today that we're really excited about is sharing the practical side and how this is working out in our lives by sharing some personal examples. So these aren't dramatic changes, but they are deeply transformational over time. And there are several areas that we're going to cover. I'm going to start with journaling. I've been journaling gratitude since 2013, so that's nothing new, right? And I added a different journaling style, a non-gratitude related one, after receiving a special gift from a friend. It's a 5-year journal. And I've been writing in it daily for over a year now. I started in January of 2025, and it has helped me remember how God has been faithful in ways that don't always show up on the gratitude list. And so it was really kind of a nice, I'll call it maybe an interruption. That wasn't the game plan for 2025. And yet the Lord really showed me how it just gave me another area where I could process things with Him, share a little bit more that maybe didn't make sense on a gratitude list. And it has really made a huge difference. But one of my struggles at the very beginning of the year in 2025 was, how am I going to integrate yet another journaling opportunity, if you will. And the Lord helped me do this. It's real simple. It's small. It's like the smallest little, like maybe it's 5 lines. I don't remember how big it is, but it's not very big. And it has made a huge difference. So how about you, Ginger? I know you journal. Anything new in that area recently?
I think I've been trying to have an attitude of listening more
Mm,
as I journal
yay.
and just inviting the Lord into that process. And it's been getting better. I feel like I was kind of stuck a little bit
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
while with journaling, and that's been nice to see that come back to life, so to speak. And I think this is where that consistency piece can come in. Um, Whether it's journaling or your time in the Word, your quiet time, so to speak. I think they're going to be, ebbs and flows and peaks
Yes.
and valleys, and there's going to be times where a lot is encouraging or standing out to you. You feel close to the Lord, and then times where it feels like the Lord is silent or that you're struggling to focus. And it's all part of the process. And so continuing to show up, continuing to practice enables you to move through the challenges and get back into a rhythm that feels more rewarding. If we get discouraged and quit, then we're going to miss out on so much. So I think that's for me, just being consistent and not giving myself a grading card of like, oh, this was a good one. This wasn't. Just let it be.
Another area where I saw small, consistent progress was something I call the looking forward to list, which is something I've referenced on the podcast before. I started this last September, so in September of 2025, during kind of a rough patch where I took some time, as you recommended earlier, to sit and figure out, why am I struggling? I'd been cultivating gratitude for so many years. Like, why is this now a struggle? And I got clarity from the Lord that I was just really struggling with looking forward to the next day. And God gave me this idea as an actual answer to prayer. I actually did like what you were talking about. I stopped, was thinking about what I was thinking about, and then asked the Lord to help me. And he helped me with this list that basically I think about the night before in reference to the next day. And it helps me look forward to things like doing the podcast with you and recording on a fun topic like this, or lunch with friends, or whatever it is. You can even look forward to it. Productivity has made it on that list for me because it feels good to be productive and get things done, especially if you have a deadline up front. So that was just a small new practice the Lord gave me that has made a huge difference over time. So how about you, Ginger? Anything different that you're seeing in your life?
I think this kind of hits more in that emotional piece. Our kids are grown, and as someone who can default to anxiety, and I'm trying with the Lord to build new rhythms in my life. And I am seeing progress in this. When something comes up with my kids, where my first default in the past would have been to start worrying, I remember that the Lord is working in their lives
Mm,
and that I can trust Him with what's going on with them. And that helps me to pray differently. I used to pray solve it prayers, fix the problem prayers for them. And I still do, but my heart is, Lord, I know that you're trustworthy with what's happening in their lives, and show me how to support them as they work this out with you.
mm.
And it really has diffused that temptation to worry about it. And so I definitely see growth in that, and it is an emotional piece.
Still on that topic of emotional pieces, I also have created this habit and seen great benefits through therapy. And that's something I reference a lot because it has not only been consistent in my life, but the results have been consistently very, very helpful. And I have experienced a lot of healing, not just in my grief journey, but also in other areas of my life, as well as I've consistently walked into the therapy office. But it's not just showing up for therapy, though obviously that's key, but it's the fact that I take notes, and nobody told me to take notes. I just knew, hey, I'm going in with the intention of healing. Like I'm not messing around. It helps me remember what we've said. And then I go back and look at it again right before my next session, which triggers in a good way. Hey, I need to bring this back up again, or I need clarity, or it makes me think of something else to bring up. And that has been so beneficial because they are great notes for me that help me take next right steps. That healing process begets more healing, right? It's kind of a snowball effect in the best of ways. So it's been really helpful for me. And it started off just showing up, right, for therapy with really no expectation other than I knew I needed it in that season for grief. So how about you? What's another one for you, Ginger?
I'm going to shift gears to the physical level, because I've been working on habits of health in my life for several years now. I feel like I have been on a diet forever, and I was very yo-yo with my eating habits. And particularly like the last 2 years, I feel like I have really become more consistent in eating healthy and being mindful of the choices that I'm making, portion control, and things like that. And that showed up on a recent trip in that I really wasn't thinking a whole lot about that. I just pretty much naturally did it. And I was able to enjoy eating on the trip, but not obsessing over, am I eating too much? Am I going to gain weight? Just all those kinds of things. And working at it little bit by little bit over time, it really does change. I no longer go through the grocery line and want to grab a candy bar because
Yeah.
it's lost the appeal. Yeah, I'll have a piece of candy every now and then, but I don't want candy and sweets all the time like maybe I did years past. So I think that's something that, when it comes to just taking care of our bodies, that's an important place to be faithful in the everyday rhythms in our life, because God has given us our physical health. It is a gift. And so what we feed our bodies is a piece of being faithful.
It reminds me of when I've done walking challenges in the past and how small steps, literally and figuratively, but literally taking the next small step, just a small short walk, led to a really healthy season in my life. And then I had a crazy idea one day that I could run a 5K, and I actually ran 2 of them. And the only reason I could do that is because I started small. Those small steps led to healthier choices, like you were saying, where then it became a default and made it easier. And that's so great. That's the perfect reminder of not to negate the small things and how those can lead to bigger things. Another area for me is clearing clutter and clearing some space, leaving a little bit more margin. I can do that with my time, but I don't do that so great at home. And I love what I had come across recently that's simplified this for me. Productivity expert David Allen talks about the 2-minute rule. If it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it. And James Clear, which we've talked about on the podcast, builds on that idea, showing how starting small, even just 2 minutes, can help build lasting habits. And for a lot of us, 2 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, and yet it makes a world of difference. I had this small cart in my office that just was not in the right place, was really bothering me. So I moved it out of my office. And as I was preparing for this podcast today, I walked past that empty space and it just gave me like room to breathe. I kind of chuckled and I thought, wow, what a difference. One small item in a room being moved, I'll say literally down the hall, made in this room and in my brain. So I really love that idea of taking time up front to do the smaller things, the less than 2-minute things, and what it changes. As I was further doing a little bit of research, I found this point out that your brain is wired for familiarity, not transformation, but your life is shaped by the moments you choose growth over comfort. And I thought that was really interesting to know that our brains are wired for familiarity. So this is why habits can be harder to change. And yet we know with God that they can. And so how about you, Ginger? Did you have any other areas that you wanted to share?
I can so relate to clearing the clutter. One of the things that I very specifically have been working on this year in terms of personal habits is just keeping up with the house a little better. And with a husband in ministry, it's not infrequent that he, wants to have people over tonight. I've been working at trying to just keep up with keeping up.
Yeah.
And I really struggle in the kitchen, keeping the counters clean, putting the clean dishes away and all the things. It's a work in progress. I love it when it's going well. And then, if the life gets busy and I'm gone for a few weeks and I come back and it's just, I got to start back over again. And I'm just working on that consistency piece. Is it exciting? No. You know, and there's days where I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But it feels so good when things are put away and I just feel like there's room to breathe. This has been a
Oh,
lifelong struggle with me because my
yes, me
brain
too.
is in 10 million different directions and I just closing the loop, putting something away, finishing this one thing before you start 5 other things. I'm still figuring out what the issue is here, but I'm growing and it's getting a little better, but it's still, man, is it a challenge.
One last thing I wanted to talk about under this, the habits and the challenges that we have faced and have seen some benefits and some success in is relationships, being consistent in our relationships. And of course, this is one of my favorite areas to talk about and possibly the easiest one for me in my life. And I've had to make some changes and adjust over the years because of different seasons. And so consistency and staying in touch in every season might be why I have been blessed to have some amazing friends who have stayed in my life for a very long time. And that has a lot of benefits. One of the things that has really helped, of course, is being the one who invites versus always waiting for invitations. But what I was thinking about when we were talking about habit formation is how to even do this in the harder seasons. And so I've had to kind of change up and do things differently. So being open to making some changes. And one of those is instead of always having to schedule an appointment with a friend, even if it's over the phone, I've just started picking up the phone and calling and hoping that I can catch someone on the other end, because that's harder in not just in this season, but in our world right now. This is just totally different. And so I just did this yesterday and got a hold of the person on the other line and had a less than 15-minute conversation. And Ginger, it was huge. It made an impact on both of us. The Lord had been talking to each of us separately in the same area. And we were both just really blessed to get confirmation to be able to talk about it. But it took less than 15 minutes. You don't always have to be this big conversation or set aside time. So anything else before we move on to another area, Ginger?
Well, this is one where the Lord has just recently been getting through my thick noggin, a relational thing that He is making me aware of. My husband has known this for a long time, but I've been slow to get it. Is I have developed a bad habit of interrupting, and I'm catching myself. Okay, Lord, help me understand why this is happening. It's like my brain moving too fast but it comes across as disrespectful or inconsiderate. And that's not my heart. I don't know if getting older, I'm worried I'm going to forget what's in my brain or what, but that's one that I am just now starting to assess with the Lord and say, Lord, okay, show me how to engage more mindfully
Mm.
when I'm in conversation with other people. So if I have interrupted any of you, my friends, please forgive me. I didn't mean to.
There is much grace because the Lord has been working on this with me too. And I wonder, is it menopause? What is it? And I think for me, it's just getting so excited about like wanting to say, yes, me too, and wanting to share. So I love that you notice that and are willing to work on that. And I am as well. So I will ditto that. If I have interrupted you, I apologize. And I love to hear what people are saying and I want to hear their heart. And the Lord will honor us, right, Ginger, in that for sure. So none of these feel dramatic in the moment. None of these changes or habits feel dramatic, but over time, they become deeply transformational. And I think especially that one that you just mentioned about interruption, what a blessing for others to not be interrupted. And I think a lot of us do this. So if you're wondering how to actually begin building a habit like this into your life, any one of these ones that we've been talking about, we talked about this in episode 21 on habit stacking. Habit stacking is simply attaching a new habit to something you're already doing. Instead of starting from scratch, you anchor the new habit, to an existing rhythm, like praying while you make coffee or reading a verse before you check your phone. It's a simple, practical way to make consistency easier, so we'll link that episode here in the show notes if you want to go deeper, and I highly recommend that one.
That was a good one. So right now, I just want to pause and say this, because this topic can get overwhelming. This isn't about doing everything. It's about choosing one small step of faithfulness and one small thing to work on in your life at a time, and let the Lord lead. Is there something that He's bringing to mind, like the interruption thing, or one spot where you're struggling and you can just start small, be consistent, don't worry about being perfect, and let grace lead? Because at the root of it, this isn't about doing more. It's about practicing faithfulness in simple, everyday ways.
So here's your habit of hope for this week. Choose one small habit, just one, and practice it as an act of faithfulness, not to achieve something, but to grow into the person God is forming you to be. Because when we are faithful in the little things, God is at work in ways we may not even see yet. If this idea of faithfulness in the small things is something you want to explore more deeply, this is really the heart behind Ginger's book, Holy in the Moment. It's about learning to recognize and respond to God in the middle of everyday life, right in the small, ordinary moments, because that's often where the deepest transformation happens. Small, faithful habits over time become a life shaped by God.